What's going on there, guys? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster here on this Monday night. It is December 5th, 2022. It's about 10:40 p.m. here, California time, along the West Coast. Latest earthquake shows a 1.8 on the big island of Hawaii. Latest earthquake activity here listed right up on the map. Notice some activity ramping up here within the last hour in the red circles. The latest one there, a 5.9 coming in just within this hour near Indonesia, about the southern end here of the Java Trench, 18 kilometers deep. Now we have seen some activity kind of ramping up here throughout the day today, including a bunch of 3s and some 4s here in the mix as well. So activity definitely ramping up within that trench zone. Also over here around the East Pacific Rise, seen some activity bouncing back and forth here along the plate boundary. Got a divergent plate boundary here, separation of the seafloor in the oceanic crust, and also we got the subduction zone over here. General plate tectonic movement shows a direction here to the east, indicating the current activity that we're seeing right now along the Peru-Chile Trench. So far, a couple earthquakes up north here, just outside of the Easter Island region, seen a little bit of swarming, and that has increased activity here further along the Peru-Chile Trench. So we'll watch that zone pretty closely. This area is definitely seeing a pretty good uptick in earthquake activity here today. Throughout the states, what do we got here? Aside from typical movement, one earthquake out here around the Missouri area. I believe that one was coming in, looks like earlier this afternoon time period. 2.6 at 1.4 kilometers deep. Very shallow earthquake. Outside of the Madison, Missouri area. A quick look at the U.S. hazard map shows it just barely within the seismically hazardous active zone called the New Madrid zone. But far as specific fault systems, I really can't remember if we have any specific faults within the Missouri area. Quick glance at the satellite view shows some, well, obviously some heavy vegetation. But also some weird looking, I don't know if these are what they are. Maybe barns or some type of other feature out there in the land. But this earthquake relatively shallow amongst all this vegetation and those little odd looking features out there. All right, Oklahoma, Missouri, or western Texas, all seen some activity today over the last 12 hours or so, mostly confined to that time. Some 2s and an occasional 3 out here in the Texas area. Here in Colorado, we got a 2.1 up against the northern Sangre de, what is that, Cristo fault? Zapata section. Hopefully I didn't slaughter that too bad. But it is in the San Luis Valley area up against the mountain ranges, a pretty significant fault zone. Don't normally see too much activity out here. A quick glance at historical data doesn't show too much activity above the 4.5 threshold. Down here near Trinidad, southern Colorado, yes. But specifically in that zone, not too much. But obviously it's a fault system. Seeing some earthquake activity on it today. Throughout portions of Utah and up into Montana as well. Looks like some movement throughout the morning period. Let me give a quick glance here at Yellowstone National Park. Not showing nothing really showing up across the USGS map. And far as earthquake activity goes, doesn't look like there's that much either. There is that signature here. I believe that is the earthquake that struck up into... where was that? I believe it was, let me see here. Let me go back to the 2.5 and above. I remember chatting about it this morning here, but had a lot going on since then. Not 100% certain what that signature is from. Definitely from earlier this morning time period, though. But far as localized seismic activity, we're not really seeing a whole lot here, specifically at Yellowstone currently. A look into the Pacific Northwest, not a whole lot going on, 2.5 and above. Got some activity up here around, that sounds pretty welcoming, Welcome Beach, Canada. 64 kilometers deep there for a 2.8. Aside from that, most of this movement here across the Cascades, all microquakes, some activity around Mount St. Helens, and general seismic activity up north of the Seattle fault zone. Still seeing some activity up here against the Oregon and Nevada border. A couple ones kicking off out there, and some twos. Northern California, seeing a little bit of activity ramping up here today, mostly south of the Bay Area. We did see a 2.6 coming in just outside of Muir Beach, 5.2 kilometers just off the San Andreas Fault. That kind of looks like where the 1906 earthquake struck up here way back then. Also some activity along the Calaveras Fault Zone. I'm going to go 2.5 and above so we can see this other activity here. The most recent one was at 2.6. But also throughout the afternoon time period, we've seen a 4.0 down here along a... there's a fault system that runs through here. I believe it's part of the Great Valley Fault Zone, if I remember right. But either way, just up against the foothills, kind of the mountainous areas here outside of Avenal, seeing that 4.0 near Kettleman City. Also there outside of San Jose, a 3.6 coming in the red. The reason why it's in the red is because of the amount of people reporting this earthquake. It was felt pretty broadly throughout the Bay Area. It looks like San Francisco, Vallejo, even down to, looks like Salinas area. The did you feel it responses there, quite numerous. Not a whole lot of shaking. I mean, not any intense shaking going on. Just some light shaking, weak to light shaking being reported from that 3.6 earlier this afternoon. So overall, we've seen definitely a seismic increase here along the west coast. Got to watch that. Down here along the southern portion of the state, we got one earthquake here. Just on the eastern section here of the San Andreas Fault on the North American side here, 1.0. This is the southern segment, and I like to watch this pretty closely. If we see any activity kind of lighten up here along this area or start seeing swarms around it, that's kind of when I get my adrenaline pumping a little bit, because that could be something to watch, obviously, against something that's been sleeping for 322, 300 and something years. That's when the last major rupture here along the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault happened, and they're predicting a 8.1 in the future for this fault segment. Let's see here. Nevada, definitely seen some activity as well. Got one earthquake here near Silver Peak. Looks like out there in the desert of Nevada. Let's see what else we have. Alaska, typical movement up there. We're not seeing anything different. No major activity along the Aleutian Trench currently. This is all from yesterday and early this morning. The northwestern segment here of the Pacific Ring of Fire looks pretty quiet according to the USGS, and on the EMSC globe here as well. That pretty much verifies it. Most of the activity today have been confined right around the Philippines area southward and all throughout the Indonesia region, including the Java Trench, where we just seen that 5.9. Further west, looks like we did have a 4.3 up there on the globe. Let me go back here to the map and see what we have. Outside of, well, Tajikistan? I always forget that one. Missy Mimi's normally helps me out here with that one. One of the two. So take your choice. 4.3 earlier this morning. Also another 4.3 over here near Turkmenistan area. Not a whole lot of activity over here recently. So looks like things are starting to bubble up a little bit. Also some activity outside of, well, it's within Italy. Doesn't look like it's off the coast, but a 4.2 coming in earlier this morning about 6 o'clock in the morning. The Atlantic Ocean looks pretty calm and clear for now. Down here in the South Sandwich Trench, we did see a 4.9 earthquake earlier this morning time period. The Big Island of Hawaii, things still continuing to rock and roll, and the earthquakes and volcanic activity. Latest statement there from the hazard notification system there on Mauna Loa still shows activity continuing. It looks like Fissure 3 is currently the active fissure, and is feeding the lava flow down slope. Currently 2.15 miles the flow front from the Daniel K Highway. There continues to be small overflows from main channels recorded over the past day, and during the past 24 hours it looks like the lava flow advanced at a rate of about 20 feet per hour. So I'm still watching this. Sulfur dioxide emission rates of approximately 120,000 tons per day were measured December 4th, 2022. These are decreased from the rate of 180,000 measured on December 1st. So a little bit of information there coming from that recent statement. Now, I did get an email back from an individual there that works for the volcano emissions with the USGS, and they mentioned right here, I kind of asked them about, I'm not going to read through this entire thing again because I covered it earlier this afternoon, but they did indicate here that there's definitely some extraordinary amounts being produced. They mentioned here 100,000 metric tons of sulfur dioxide emitted into the free troposphere every day since the eruption began. And they compare it basically with a similar magnitude back in 1984. Once emitted into the atmosphere, sulfur dioxide can be oxidized to form sulfate aerosols, the primary component of VOG. And acid rain can occur. Precipitation falls through dense clouds. Rain samples collected downwind of the active fissures during the 2018 Kilauea eruption had pH values as low as 4. So that's below the 4.5 normal level, indicating the influence there of acidic gas emissions. So kind of a big deal. I do want to go over the SO2 chart here from the windy map. Make sure I got the most recent map here. There is a current wind streams, upper level. Well, I believe these are the surface levels. Let me go over here to the SO2 concentrations. There's a lot of stuff you can look at here on windy.com, one of my favorite apps. There is a low pressure system here kind of spinning, obviously counterclockwise, stirring up, picking back up that concentrated SO2 emissions here in the dark red color, stirring it back towards Hawaii, and also being picked up here in the jet stream headed towards the Baja California area, and a stream of it going across the southern plains headed towards the east coast. There is a pretty heavily concentrated area over the Gulf currently, with high pressure just kind of spinning it in that area, nothing really picking it up, just kind of hovering around the atmosphere. And as you can see, it just gets picked up and spread out all over the place. But the majority of this activity here has been over the last couple days since Mauna Loa has erupted. It's just been hovering within that zone. Obviously, there's other volcanoes across the Earth that are in eruptive stage throughout the Indonesia Islands area. One down here, it looks like near Vanuatu area, it looks like. A couple of them possibly. But man, nothing quite like Kilauea volcano. Or Mauna Loa, excuse me. So I'm just kind of watching that. I'm just kind of curious to see what type of event this will play on the climate here over the coming years. I think it takes a little bit for the effects of this to kick up. I know during major eruptions here we see pretty much a cooling period of the Earth, not by a huge amount, but noticeable increase in cooling with the amount of those particles up in the air, kind of reducing the amount of sunlight that reaches the Earth's surface. So we'll continue to watch it, continue to report back on it for sure. GeoNet servers here. Let me go over to those guys and see what we got going on here with the GeoNet. Weak earthquakes and above. Looks like a 3.0 earlier. Well, almost 24 hours ago. Let's go to the all events here. A couple twos, couple. There's a 2.7 there. That kind of looks like it's around the volcano. Tapo volcano. Let's check that out real quick. The drums there at that super volcano. Kind of covered that over the last couple updates. Here's the latest drum seismograph station readings. Looks like this is all up to date. Got some earthquake activity here within the last few minutes kicking up. Although over the last, I would say definitely, oh man, almost last 24 hours, things have been relatively quiet, but they're starting to kick back up currently here. So we'll watch that for some potential uptick in earthquake activity. The tremor map tonight, Cascadia tremor, shows 347 epicenters up around the Seattle area. This area did see some movement last night. Kind of looks like we're coming back into that that active period. This area sees a pretty large event of tremor every 14 months, I believe it is. But notice these little features up here, these lines that are much higher on the graph, indicating more frequency of tremors along the Cascadia. Not volcanic tremor, but the subduction of the plates there. They kind of give off a different type of vibrational frequency, and they're called tremors. Definitely not earthquakes, but it is adding stress upstream to the locked area. Kind of looks like if we go back into that uptick, that's going to make these lines awfully close here. And we've been noticing a pattern of these lines closing the gap, so to speak. Before, it seemed like we had, periods of time in between these major events, and now they're getting closer and closer together. So just kind of watching that. I definitely want to pay attention to what's going on here and record and document all this stuff, just in case signs like this lead up to a major Cascadia eruption or earthquake. So just kind of watching it right now. 347 epicenters there outside, underneath the Seattle area, Strait of Juan de Fuca region. All right, space weather. Let's jump into that real quick. There is our G1 storm. We were expecting that there from the coronal hole number 53 that had been facing us. Current latest image shows it now positioned a little bit further away from the Earth's facing side, heading off to the western edge here of the sun. The effects of that coronal hole will be coming up here. Looks like around the December 8th time period, where we could be seeing a G1 class storm. So we'll definitely watch that pretty closely. Solar flare activity is diminishing. There's not a whole lot happening. Current levels are below the sea level threshold, and the sunspots are numerous, and they are ginormous or gigantic, if you want to be correct, or if you want me to be correct. Oh goodness. 3153 still down here, looking pretty massive, but I don't think we're going to see anything major coming from that currently. But either way, we've got to watch all these sunspots, because they can develop and rapidly destabilize and produce off some flares. But current threat level looks like 90% chance of a C flare, even though we really haven't seen any. M flare at 40%, X flare at 10%, so that's a little bit elevated. So maybe these guys have a little bit of information here as well as to maybe one of these are advancing, looking more dynamic. I'm really not seeing it. If anything, I think possibly from this area, getting quite a bit of different types of magnetic structures down there with that sunspot. And that one's coming up, being lined up here perfectly with the Earth. So we'll watch that closely here in the next few hours, next 24 hours or so, as it rotates into view, into Earth view directly. All right, let's see what else. I think that's about it here, folks. Things are kind of dying off in the solar density and speed. Everything's stable there on the BTBZ component of the interplanetary magnetic field. So we'll definitely wait for that G1 storm to come up around the 8th of December time period. All right, folks, have a good night. Still live view there of Mauna Loa. Fissure 3 erupting on the northeastern rift zone. Things have not died down. In fact, it looks pretty darn active right now. Those fountains of lava just spewing up and spewing out tons and tons of SO2 out there into the atmosphere. And I couldn't get the USGS to really tell me what effects this may have on long-term climate. I don't think maybe they're in the position to say that. But they did admit, it's a definitely extraordinary amount of SO2s coming out. and we'll just kind of see how it goes. Latest earthquake, another 4.3 into the Indonesia area, so watch that area pretty closely. Things kind of ramping up there over the last couple hours. Stay safe, folks. We'll catch you guys a little bit later tomorrow sometime. Peace out.